There's a kind of discipline that never bends, never breaks. Not when exhaustion sets in, not when the world collapses around you, not when every fiber of your being begs to quit. Today, you'll uncover the ancient system that forged unbreakable warriors, the shinobi, masters of stealth and resilience in feudal Japan. Have you ever wondered how these shadow warriors survived months alone in the mountains, training in secret for years without detection, maintaining ironclad discipline without modern tools like apps or motivational gurus? The answer lies not in willpower, but in something deeper, a philosophy called Ninpo, the way of the invisible warrior. When you grasp its 5 pillars, you'll see why the discipline you've tried to build until now was like a house on shifting sand. The shinobi understood a truth about human nature that modern science only later confirmed. Our brains aren't wired for discipline, they're wired for survival. Their system thrives because it aligns with this primal instinct, but it demands a cost. This path rejects half-hearted attempts. It requires sacrifice, the death of the weak version of you that breaks promises to itself. Before we dive into this system, I invite you to subscribe, like this video, and activate the notification bell to stay connected with future content. Thank you for your attention. Now, let's begin. In 1540, in Japan's Iga prefecture, a 14-year-old boy named Tishi carried a nickname that stung like a lash, Tishi the Lazy. In his village, nestled in the shadow of mist-covered mountains, he dreamed of becoming a shinobi, inspired by fleeting glimpses of dark figures gliding across rooftops under moonlight. The shinobi were more than warriors. They were legends, ghosts woven into the fabric of feudal Japan's warring states, trained by secretive clans like the Koga and Iga to serve warlords with unmatched skill. But Tishi had a problem. He was utterly undisciplined. Each morning he'd wake with grand promises. Today, I'll train. 3 push-ups later, he'd collapse, distracted by hunger. He'd vow to meditate, only to fidget for 2 minutes before wandering off. He'd swing a wooden sword 5 times, then quit when his arms ached. The cycle was relentless. Monday mornings filled with resolve, afternoons with excuses, and by Tuesday, forgotten promises. His father, a blacksmith with hands hardened by fire and iron, had no patience for such dreams. Tishi, shinobi are myths, stories to scare children. Learn my trade and forget this nonsense. He knew the truth, that a hidden shinobi school existed in the mountains. But he withheld it, hoping to crush his son's dangerous fantasies. Yet Tishi's heart was tethered to those peaks, where he believed his destiny waited. Every night he gazed at the mountains, whispering, "What if I really try this time?" And every day he failed again. Until one fateful evening, everything shifted, not as he dreamed, but in a way that would redefine him. Returning from the forest after another half-hearted attempt at training, 20 minutes of twirling twigs, Tishi froze. A man stood on the path, unremarkable in plain clothes, but his eyes pierced like daggers, seeing through Tishi's soul. "You want to be a shinobi?" It wasn't the question, Tishi stammered. "I was just—" The man cut him off, wasting time again. "How many times have you promised today would be different?" Silence hung heavy, as Tishi knew the answer. "Countless." The man stepped closer. "Come with me, keep up, and I'll show you the school." "Fail, and you're a blacksmith forever." The mountain loomed ahead, 3 hours of grueling ascent. Tishi had never sustained effort for 3 minutes, let alone hours. But something stirred within him, perhaps the raw clarity of the man's voice, or the weight of this singular chance, or simply exhaustion with his own weakness. "I go," he said. The first 20 minutes were tolerable, fueled by adrenaline. At 40, his legs burned like forge fires. By the hour mark, his mind screamed familiar excuses. "This is madness. You're not built for this. Try again tomorrow." The man pressed on, never slowing, never looking back. 2 hours in, Tishi crawled, hands bloodied, knees scraped, tears mixing with sweat. His body begged to stop, but in that moment a revelation struck. Pain was irrelevant. Fatigue was irrelevant. What mattered was the choice he'd made at the trail's start. He'd given his word, and warriors keep their word. Dragging himself upright, he staggered on. 3 hours and 15 minutes later, he collapsed at the summit, vomiting, then blacking out. When he awoke, he was inside a temple, dark wooden walls, the faint scent of incense, a stillness that felt alive. The man sat before him. "You completed the first lesson of Ninpo without knowing it. Welcome to the Koga school." Tishi's new life began before dawn, jolted awake by a bronze bell that seemed to rattle his bones. 15 other young men stood ready, clad in identical dark robes, eyes fixed forward. The master? The same man from the mountain stood at the hall's center. In Ninpo, there are no attempts. You are or you are not. From now on, you are students. The bell rings, you wake, no negotiation. Tishi glanced out the window. It was still dark. But sensei, what time? The master's glare silenced him. Questions are thoughts. Thoughts breed hesitation. Hesitation breeds death. The bell rings. You wake. That's all. The first week was hell. The bell rang at an ungodly hour. An hour of silent meditation followed. Then 2 hours of grueling physical training. 2 more of strategy study and stealth practice until dusk. Sleep, repeat. Tishi wanted to quit daily, his body and mind rebelling. But something was different. He couldn't. On the first day, he'd stood before the school and sworn an oath. I am a student of the ninja way. My word is my life. If I break it, I am nothing. The entire community witnessed it, recorded in the master's book. This was the first pillar of Ninpo, Ketsui, the public oath. It wasn't a promise to try. It was a declaration of identity. Failure wasn't just personal. It was social death, a primal fear rooted in our ancestral need for tribal trust. The shinobi, centuries before neuroscience, understood this. As a 16th century text from the Koga clan notes, a warrior's word is his soul. To break it is to sever his place among men. But the fixed schedule only resolved when to wake up. Tishi discovered a new battlefield, what to do during training. Some days he wanted to focus more on strength, others on speed. Sometimes he felt inspired to go rock climbing. Other times he wanted to work on sword techniques. His mind had found a new opening for negotiation. Since he couldn't argue about when to train, he began to argue about how to train. The master saw this too. You are creating chaos where there should be form. In Ninpo, we practice kata, perfect form, repeated endlessly. And then he explained something that sounded like insanity. For 100 days, you will do exactly the same training sequence, same movements, same order, same number of repetitions. No variation, 0. Teishi was confused. But sensei, won't I get bored? Won't I stop evolving? Boredom is the ego-resisting transformation. And you only evolve when the practice becomes so automatic that your consciousness can finally observe the invisible details. I'll tell you what, no one tells you about variety. You think variety keeps things interesting, but variety is actually where discipline dies. Every day, you change your workout. Your brain has to make micro decisions. Should I squat or run today? How long should I spend on each exercise? Which technique should I practice first? Every decision is a crack where your old patterns leak back in. Tishi began his personal shuyo period, 100 days in the same way. The sequence was brutal. 50 push-ups, 100 squats, 30 minutes of sword practice following specific kata, 20 minutes of breathing techniques. The same order, the same place, the same time every single day. First week, his mind screamed for novelty. This is stupid. You're human, not a machine. Vary things or you'll go crazy. By the second week, the other students were starting to comment, man, you're turning into a robot. Where's the creativity, the self-expression? The master listened and laughed. Creativity without foundation is just organized chaos. You want to express yourself. First master the form. Only then will you have something to express. The third week was pure psychological warfare. Every day, Taeshi had to fight the voice that said, do something different today, just for today, just so it doesn't get boring. But he remembered the student who was expelled. He remembered the oath. He continued the form. In the fourth week, something strange started to happen. Mental stamina weakened. Not because Tishi got stronger, because stamina wears out faster than discipline. His brain realized he had no available trade. No matter how many times it screamed for variation, the answer was always the same, no. Eventually, the brain stopped screaming. Week 6 was when the magic happened. Tishi was mid-push-ups when he realized he wasn't thinking. His body was moving through the sequence on its own, like water flowing along the route it always had. It wasn't boredom. It was freedom. Freedom from the tyranny of constant decision-making. 8th week during sword practice, he noticed for the first time a microscopic detail in his wrist movement. Something that would have been impossible to see if his mind had been busy deciding which technique to practice. The master was watching. Now you see, when form becomes automatic, consciousness can finally pay attention. A neuroscientist at Kyoto University who has been studying the automation of behavior for 18 years has discovered something revolutionary. When you repeat an exact sequence of actions for approximately 66 days in the same context, the basal ganglia take over control of the movement. The prefrontal cortex is freed up for higher functions. The behavior becomes as automatic as breathing. This echoes the ancient Zen principle of mushin no shin, mind without mind, where repetition in kata, a cornerstone of Japanese martial arts like karate and aikido, transcends mere technique to become a path to enlightenment, stripping away the ego's chatter to reveal pure action. Teishi's journey mirrored this. In the relentless kata, he confronted the illusions of self, much like a modern soul battling the distractions of endless choices in a world of apps and options, where true mastery demands surrendering variety for depth. On the 45th day, Teishi developed a fever. His body was weak, his head was heavy. Everything hurt. The temptation was obvious. I'll skip today. No one trains when they're sick. I'll come back tomorrow when I'm better. This is where everyone gives up, where you gave up before because you believe the all or nothing lie. If I can't do it perfectly, I don't do it at all. If I can't do it completely, I wait until I can. This logic seems sensible, but it's actually the silent killer of any consistency you've ever tried to create. Teishi went to his master. "Sensei, I'm sick. Should I rest today?" The master looked at him as if he'd said the most idiotic thing in the world. Rest is different from giving up. If you need true rest, rest. But you're not asking about rest. You're asking for permission to create a gap. What's the difference? A river never stops flowing. During a drought, it becomes a trickle. During a storm, it becomes a torrent, but it never stops. The moment it stops, it is no longer a river. It is just a hole where the water used to be. Your practice is the same. And then the master taught the third pillar of Ninpo, Muku, practice without gaps. Are you feeling weak today? Do 10 push-ups instead of 50. Meditate for 5 minutes instead of 20. But do something because momentum is more valuable than perfection. Teishi did half the normal training. It was horrible. It was imperfect. It was completely sufficient because he maintained momentum. He didn't create a gap. The next day when the fever subsided, his body returned to full training as if nothing had happened. If he had jumped completely, his body would have interpreted it as a change in pattern. It would have resisted the next day. Well, you jumped yesterday. Why not jump today too? But because he never created the gap, the pattern remained intact. Day 70, massive storm. The training hall flooded. Teishi thought he finally had a legitimate excuse. He sought out his master. "Sensei, where do we train today?" The master pointed to the covered patio. "There, but it's raining." The sensei replied, "So what? Do you think enemies only attack on sunny days? Do you think missions only happen when you're comfortable?" Teishi trained in the rain. Soaked clothes, slippery ground, bone-chilling cold. But he trained without a break. This resilience drew from the shinobi's cultural ethos, where nature's fury was seen not as an obstacle, but as a teacher, forging the spirit in the same way Zen monks endure harsh zazen sessions to awaken inner strength, reminding us that life's storms, be they literal or the chaos of daily crises, test our commitment to the path. But Teishi was about to discover something that nearly broke him. Because no matter how strong your oath, how fixed your schedule, how perfect your form, there's one kind of obstacle that knocks everyone down. The obstacle you didn't see coming. Day 80. Teishi's father showed up at school. Family emergency. He needed to return to the village immediately. Teishi panicked, not because of the emergency, but because of his training. 20 days to go until the 100 days. If he broke now, the master stopped him before he could speak. Do you think obstacles ask permission? Do you think life respects your 100 days? But sensei, I promised to complete. You promised to practice without gaps. You didn't promise it would be convenient. This is your true test, not when everything is perfect, but when everything goes wrong. And then the master taught the fourth pillar, Zeni, prior preparation. A shinobi is never caught off guard because he has already decided his answers before the questions arise. When X happens, he does Y without thinking, without hesitation. He just executes. The master had Tishi sit down and list every possible obstacle: travel, illness, visitor, emergency, extreme weather, injury. For each one, they wrote down the exact answer: traveling, pre-dawn road workout; sick, half the reps; arm injury, focus on the legs; arm injury, focus on the legs; rain, covered patio; family emergency, essential 15-minute workout. Tishi returned to the village. He spent 3 days helping his family, but every day at 4:00 a.m. he woke up. He did a condensed version: 20 push-ups, 10 minutes of meditation, basic sword kata. The neighbors thought he had lost his mind. Your father needs help, and you're playing with a sword at 4:00 a.m. But Teishi understood something they never would. He was helping his father all day. Morning training didn't take anything away from that. It kept his identity intact so he could be strong for his family. He returned to school on day 83. The teacher asked, "How many days did you miss?" "None, sensei." The master smiled for the first time. "Now you're beginning to understand." A behavioral psychologist at the University of Tokyo, who has been studying decision-making for 22 years, found when you pre-decide your actions, you remove decision fatigue from the critical moment. Your prefrontal cortex, responsible for willpower, remains intact to execute rather than decide. This can increase your success rate by up to 300%. In the spirit of ancient teachings like Sun Tzu's Art of War, which emphasizes foreseeing chaos, this pillar transforms unpredictability into opportunity, much like navigating today's unforeseen disruptions with a prepared mind that turns crisis into growth. Day 95, 5 days to go until the 100 days of Shuyo. Teishi was different. Everyone at school noticed. He didn't talk about training, he simply trained. He didn't promise to wake up early, he simply woke up. He didn't need motivation. The practice happened on its own. The other students began to whisper, "How does he do it? How does he never fail?" One of the older students replied, "He doesn't. He is." Day 100 arrived. Teishi completed the sequence for the 100th consecutive time. No flaws, no gaps, no exceptions. The bell rang, marking the end of the Shuyo. He expected to feel relief. He expected to want to celebrate, but he felt only silence. A deep, strange silence. The master called him. "How do you feel?" "Empty, sensei, but not in a bad way. Like something heavy has been lifted off. What came out was the version of you that needed to decide. Now you have reached the 5th pillar of Ninpo, Mushin, the mindless mind." Mushin means no mind, the master explained, but it doesn't mean stupidity. It means no ego, no hesitation, no inner conflict between what you should do and what you want to do. When a samurai attacks you with a sword, you don't have time to think, should I dodge or block? If you think you die, the response must be automatic, instantaneous, without the interference of the hesitating ego. This is what you built in those 100 days. Not just a workout habit. You killed the part of you that negotiates with yourself. Teishi understood. In the past 30 days, he hadn't had a single thought about trading. No. What if I jumped today? No. Maybe tomorrow would be better. The practice simply happened like a heartbeat, like lungs breathing. The master continued. Now comes the real test. Your 100 days are over. The fixed form is over. The question is, will you return to who you were, or have you become something different? Teishi didn't need to think. I'll continue. Why? Because I'm no longer someone who trains. I'm someone who is. The master nodded. Welcome to true Ninpo. This state of mushin, drawn from Zen Buddhism that permeated shinobi training, represents the pinnacle of self-mastery ego death, where action flows without the mind's turbulent waves. Historical accounts from the Bunsen Shukai, a 17th century ninja manual, describe mushin as the warrior's ultimate weapon, allowing feats like enduring prolonged isolation or silent infiltration, much like Teishi's transformation, reminding us that true courage arises not from force, but from the quiet surrender of inner conflict, a lesson as relevant in today's chaotic world as in ancient Japan. 3 months later, Teishi was no longer a student, he was a shinobi, not because he received a certificate, because something fundamental in his structure had changed. His discipline frightened the other students. He never talked about training, never complained, never negotiated. He was simply the kind of person who got things done. One day, a new student asked, "How do you manage to never fail?" Tishi gave the same answer his master had given him. Failure is no longer an option in my mind. Not because I'm strong, because I've removed the option. The student was confused. How do you remove an option? You sacrifice the person you were, the person who negotiated, the person who hesitated. And when that person dies, what's left is only the warrior who kept his word. But Tishi's transformation didn't stop with training. Something much deeper had happened. And when people started to notice, they didn't say how impressive. They said, "This isn't normal." And that's exactly what you need to hear. 6 months after completing Shuyo, Teshi was sent on his first real mission, infiltrating an enemy castle to retrieve documents. The mission lasted 7 days, 7 days without adequate sleep, without sufficient food, without comfort. Everything that could have gone wrong did. But Teshi completed the mission. He returned with the documents. When the other shinobi asked how he endured, he said, "I did what needed to be done." But the truth was deeper. During those 7 days, not once did Teshi think, "I can't take it," because that voice had long since died. In its place, there was only clarity, only action. The master called him over later. People will start looking at you differently. They'll call you obsessive. They'll say you're extreme, that you need balance. Do you know why? No, sensei, because your discipline exposes their weakness. You are living proof that all the excuses they make are just choices, and that makes them uncomfortable. And the master was right. As Tishi's reputation grew, people's reactions changed. Some admired him, others feared him, but most reacted with something between discomfort and resentment. He's not normal. No one needs to be so disciplined. That can't be healthy. But Tishi had learned something crucial. When your discipline scares others, you're finally on the right level. Normal people get normal results. But warriors, true warriors, operate on a different level. A level where "I can't" doesn't exist in the vocabulary. One day, Tishi was training in the courtyard at 4,000 a.m. when a group of new students walked by. One of them muttered, "Man, that's scary. He never stops." Tishi listened and smiled because he remembered the boy he was 5 years ago. The boy who couldn't do 3 push-ups. The boy everyone called lazy. That boy was no more, and in his place was a warrior. Ninpo doesn't make you a better person. It makes you a different person. A person others will look at and think, "That's not human." And when you hear those words, you know you finally killed the weak version of yourself. Because you see, the system isn't complicated. It has 5 pillars. First, Ketsui, the public oath. You stop making private promises that no one knows about and start making public declarations that change your identity. Not "I will try," but "I am." Second, the unchanging rhythm. You choose a fixed schedule and remove time as a variable. Your body learns the pattern. The negotiation about when disappears. Third, kata, the perfect form. You do exactly the same thing every day for at least 100 days. No variation, no creativity, just repetition until the practice becomes automatic. Fourth, muku, practice without gaps. You never create a complete gap no matter what. Emergency, reduced version, illness, half practice. But never zero, because zero breaks momentum. Fifth, zini, prior preparation. You list every possible obstacle and pre-decide your response. When X happens, you do Y. No thinking, no negotiating, just execution. These 5 pillars transformed Tishi from a boy who couldn't do 3 push-ups into a shinobi who accomplished impossible missions, not because he got stronger, because he killed the part of him that hesitated. And now I ask you, are you ready for this kind of transformation? Because I'm not going to lie to you. This path isn't comfortable. It's not easy. It's not for those who just want to improve a little. The Ninpo system will require you to sacrifice a version of yourself. The version that negotiates, the version that hesitates, the version that has 1,000 excuses about why today isn't the right day, and in that person's place, a warrior will be born. Someone who doesn't need cheap motivation, because cheap motivation is for those who are still deciding. A warrior is someone who doesn't break commitments because commitments are part of identity, not part of a to-do list. People will look at you differently. They'll call you obsessive. They'll say you need to relax, that you're overreacting, that this isn't healthy. Great. That means you're on the right track, because the discipline that scares others is the only discipline worth having. The discipline that makes people uncomfortable is the only discipline that produces extraordinary results. The question isn't whether the system works. The question is, do you have the courage to commit completely? Don't try, don't test, commit, choose a habit. 1. Make your public pledge. Choose your fixed schedule. Define your perfect form. Commit to 100 days without gaps. Pre-solve every obstacle. And then watch what happens when you stop negotiating with yourself. Tishi wasn't special. He was just a weak boy who decided to sacrifice himself so that a warrior could be born. You can do the same. If you like this video, I invite you to subscribe to the channel and activate the bell to receive future content. Remember, discipline is only bad when there is little of it. If you've made it this far, thank you very much for your attention. Until the next video.